The silence in my apartment was a comfort I'd earned. It was a Tuesday evening, the soft blue light of a forgotten documentary playing across the walls, and I was curled up with a book, savoring the simple peace of my own company. My phone, face down on the coffee table, buzzed with an insistent, jarring rhythm. I almost ignored it, but a glance showed not one, but two names flashing on the screen, Aunt Carol and Aunt Linda. A simultaneous call from my mother's two sisters was unusual. A knot of mild anxiety tightened in my stomach. Maybe it was a family emergency. I swiped to answer, putting them on speaker. Aunt Carol? Aunt Linda? Is everything okay? Chloe, honey? Aunt Carol's voice was strained, a thin wire of tension I could almost see. Are you alone? Yes, I'm alone. What's going on? There was a heavy pause, and then Linda's voice, usually so full of laughter, came out small and broken. We need to see you. Right now. It's important. Can't it wait until tomorrow? It's getting late. I tried to keep my voice light, but the urgency in theirs was a cold draft in my warm room. Double quotes. No, Chloe. It really can't. Carol's tone brooked no argument. It was the voice she used to manage boardrooms, a voice that commanded obedience. We're downstairs. We just pulled up. My blood ran cold. They were here, together. Carol and Linda were as different as two sisters could be. Carol, the eldest, was a sleek, successful corporate lawyer. Her life a curated collection of designer suits, strategic decisions, and a husband, my Uncle Mark, who was a partner at a prestigious architectural firm. Their life in a sprawling suburban home was the picture of polished, quiet achievement. Linda, the free spirit, was a potter with a thriving online business, her hands always slightly stained with clay, her home filled with the scent of incense and the joyful chaos of her three kids. Her husband, my Uncle David, was a high school music teacher, a kind, gentle man with a perpetual smile. They loved each other, but their worlds rarely collided without a family holiday as a buffer. For them to be in the same car, driving to my downtown apartment together on a random Tuesday, could only mean one thing. Something was terribly wrong. Okay, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I'll buzz you in. The minutes it took for the elevator to climb to my floor felt like an eternity. I paced my living room, my mind racing through terrible possibilities. Was it my mom? My grandfather? Had there been an accident? When the knock came, it was timid, completely at odds with the two women I knew. I opened the door to find them standing side by side, a study in contrasts even in their distress. Carol was in her sharp after-work blazer and slacks, but her makeup was smudged, her usually impeccable blonde bob slightly disheveled. Linda, in a flowing, paint-splattered tunic, had been crying. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. They stepped inside without a word, and I closed the door, the click of the latch sounding final. Can I get you something? Water, tea? I asked, the hostess and me operating on autopilot. They both shook their heads, sinking onto my sofa as if their legs could no longer hold them. They sat at opposite ends, a wide, anxious space between them. The air was thick with unspoken words. Chloe, Carol began, her lawyerly composure cracking. She clasped her hands tightly in her lap to stop them from trembling. What we're about to tell you, you can never, ever repeat it. To anyone. Especially not to your mother. I nodded, my throat tight. Of course. Linda took a shaky breath. We've done something terrible, and we need your help. I sat down in the armchair opposite them, bracing myself. Were they in financial trouble? Had one of them gotten a scary diagnosis they were hiding from the family? What came out of their mouths next was so far from anything I could have imagined that my brain simply refused to process it at first. It's about our husbands, Carol said, her gaze fixed on a spot on my rug. Mark and David, Linda whispered. Fresh tears welling in her eyes, I leaned forward, confused. What about them? Are they okay? Carol let out a short, bitter laugh that held no humor. Oh, they're just fine. They've been just fine for a very, very long time. The room seemed to tilt. I looked from Carol's anguished face to Linda's devastated one, the puzzle pieces refusing to fit. And then they did. The simultaneous arrival. The shared secret. The plea for help. The focus on both husbands. A monstrous, impossible picture began to form in my mind. No, I breathed, the word a denial. You can't mean... Linda buried her face in her hands. We think we know. Mark and David are having an affair. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the hum of my refrigerator. I stared at them, my mind a roaring static. It was absurd. It was laughable. Mark, with his love of golf and classic cars, and David, with his folk music and dad jokes. The idea was so profoundly ridiculous that I almost said so out loud. But the raw, gut-wrenching pain on my aunts' faces was not ridiculous. It was the most real thing I had ever seen. That's impossible, I finally managed. How? Why would you even think that? It all came out in a rushed, tangled confession. The clues they explained had been there for years, hiding in plain sight. Easily explained away until they couldn't be any more. It started with the guys' trips. Mark and David had always been close, a fact the whole family celebrated. It was a blessing, everyone said, that the two brothers-in-law got along so well. Their fishing weekends, their annual sports pilgrimage to a different city, their weekly Wednesday night dinner and a movie. They were the best of friends, but Carol, with her analytical mind, had started a spreadsheet. A casual comment from Linda about David's newfound interest in modern art of passion. Mark had had for decades, had been the first thread. Then, Carol noticed that Mark's credit card bill showed a charge for a romantic, upscale restaurant in a neighboring city on a night he was supposedly at a sports bar with David. When she'd casually mentioned it, Mark had brushed it off, saying David had lost his wallet and he'd treated him. Linda, in turn, had found a receipt in David's jacket pocket for 2 tickets to a symphony, a far cry from the indie films he claimed to love. The date was a Wednesday. When she'd asked, he'd said he'd gone with a colleague from school. The coincidences piled up. Unexplained charges on bank statements. A familiar cologne scent on both of them. A certain softness in their eyes when they spoke to each other that was more than just friendship. The way they always seemed to know what the other was thinking, finishing each other's sentences in a way that went beyond a simple buddy comedy routine. The final, crushing blow came just this afternoon. Linda, helping David clean out his car, had found a small velvet box tucked deep under the passenger seat. Inside was a simple, elegant silver bracelet. Her heart had leapt, thinking it was an early anniversary gift. But later, while making the bed, she'd found a receipt in the laundry. It was from a high-end jeweler made out to Mark for the exact same bracelet. The date was 2 days ago. She called Carol, her voice trembling, to ask a seemingly innocent question. Did Mark get you a silver bracelet recently? The silence on the other end of the line had been deafening. Carol had just found an identical receipt in Mark's office. They had compared notes over a frantic, tear-filled phone call and the separate, manageable suspicions they had each carried for years coalesced into a single, horrifying certainty. Their husbands weren't just best friends. They were in love. We've been living a lie, Carol said, her voice hollow. For 20 years, Chloe, our entire marriages. The family barbecues, the Christmas photos, the vacations. Linda sobbed. It was all a show. We were their beards, their cover story. I felt sick. The foundation of my entire extended family, the happy, Stable unit I'd always taken for granted was not just cracked, it was a complete and utter fabrication. The image of Uncle Mark, so stern and proper, and Uncle David, so warm and goofy, locked in a secret, passionate embrace, was so dissonant it made my head spin. My heart broke for my aunts, for the decades of intimacy and partnership that had been a sham. I am so sorry, I whispered, tears stinging my own eyes. But why are you telling me this? What can I possibly do? They exchanged a look, a silent communication of shared desperation. Carol took a deep breath. We need you to help us prove it, she said. Conclusively, without a doubt. My blood ran cold. Me? How? We're too close, Linda explained, wiping her eyes. If we try to follow them, they'll sense it. They know our routines, our tells. You're family, but you're on the outside. They'd never suspect you. The request was staggering. They wanted me to spy on my own uncles. We need to know the truth. Chloe, Carol pleaded, her professional facade gone, replaced by the raw vulnerability of a betrayed wife. We can't confront them with just circumstantial evidence. They're too smart. Mark will talk his way out of it, and David will just go along. We need a photograph, a video, something undeniable. We need to see it with our own eyes. They proposed a plan. This coming Wednesday was their usual movie night. According to their stories, they were going to see the new action blockbuster at the multiplex. But Carol, through a contact, had already discovered that Mark had booked a room at a boutique hotel downtown. The Alexander, under his brother's name. We want you to be there, Linda said, her voice trembling but firm. In the lobby, with your phone. We just need to see them check in together. That's all the proof we need.